there are given themes, and this is what the hexagrams are about. This was the genius of the Chinese, to realize that time has elements. The orthodox, or let me put it this way, Western science had to go through a whole conceptual reformulation to realize that space is not simply where you put things. That's how space is treated in Newtonian dynamics, and up until Einstein, it's just the necessary dimension for three-dimensional description. But then Einstein said, well, no, space is a thing affected by magnetic fields, torqued in the nearby vicinity of a star. And so then this notion that it was a thing and that it could have various properties of curvature became allowable. Now what I'm suggesting is that time has elements, 64 of them, as a matter of fact. And the formulators of the I Ching simply, by stilling the heart, by eliminating noise from the body, were able to see these states, which we could call quantum mechanical, but since they are not material, we don't need to invoke the holy god of quantum mechanics to bless this effort. Anyway, whatever these things are, and in whatever dimension they exist, you could think of them more, I think of them more like Platonic archetypes. The way in which they interpenetrate three-dimensional being is what gives three-dimensional being its primary qualities. The qualities of color, of tone, of emotion, of feeling, all of the descriptive qualities that science has left out and called epiphenomenal and subjective, but which are the things we all experience. You know, what science has achieved is a tremendous devaluation of primary experience. And what this notion is trying to say is that there is possible a physics of experience, an understanding of history that will make it coherent, so that the coherency which we know must be resident in the universe is no longer a value dark dimension to us. The order becomes visible. Now, how does this work? I always use this rather idiotic example, but it amuses me. It's that if you find yourself in Hadrian's hamburger joint having a burger, there is a direct causal relationship between your doing that and the campaigns of the Roman Emperor Hadrian. You are in fact passing through the Hadrian analogic moment. Now, I think the only person who has really understood this to bedrock is probably James Joyce, who realized that a walk to the store is the Trojan War. It is the Trojan War. You cannot pass through a gate without passing through the gates of Thermopylae. You cannot, and so a notion like reincarnation or past lives is seen in a whole different light. What we are harmonic adumbrations of events in the past. Now this comes fairly close to Rupert Sheldrake's notion, and we've talked a lot about this. What is absent in Rupert's scheme is an explanation of novelty. What he is saying is that the past has a tremendous influence on the future, that the very fact that something has happened sets up all following time for a higher likelihood of this thing happening. What I'm suggesting is that that's true, but that then the mystery of why there is novelty is solved by realizing that the way in which the morphogenetic field impinges upon reality is through a fractal expression. And there would be nothing surprising about this. the electromagnetic waves described by Maxwell's equation. That is essentially a fractal transform. It is how waves work. So another way of thinking about this notion that we are adumbrations of larger historical epochs is the aphorism, Rome falls 9 times an hour. This is the idea, and it does. I mean, I always notice it. It's just there. We are very state-bounded in our self-observations, and we only tend to value what is relevant to profane existence and communication. So the fact that as you sweep the house, you notice Rome falling 9 times an hour, there's not much to say about it. It's just, I think weird things. I wonder if everybody thinks weird things. I think the answer is yes. And that not only does Rome fall 9 times an hour, but the Celts move out of Spain and into England 9 times an hour, and so forth. That really the present is an interference pattern caused by epochs in the past coming together to create a certain particular situation. So what has been happening since 1945, since the dawn moment over Hiroshima, is that the entire history of the universe is being recapitulated. Now, it has many cycle levels of cyclic expression. On one level, the first land animals have yet to appear. We are truly in the inchoate darkness. On the level of the 4,306-year cycle, we are deep in the Dark Ages. And on the basis of that, in the barbarians, the time when the barbarian hordes poured into Europe, the sacking of Eleusis and all that, I see punk culture as the harmonic response to the fact of this happening. On the basis of it, I would predict that in the late 80s, the new wave punk phenomenon will give way to an almost gothic religious sensibility, which will be in fact a recapitulation of the early Middle Ages and feminine, well, no. In the Mariological cults that found their expression at Chartres and places like that in the early 90s, we will have a feminist revival which will be slightly wrong-headed because it will make those same mistakes that those Gothic people made. We will not even reach the threshold of the Industrial Revolution until about 2003. So you see, the notion of us sitting around making sense of things is quite preposterous. I mean, we are still waiting for Newton, let alone for Maxwell and Einstein. We are not prehistory, except on the highest level. So this intensification will occur. Now, what is it leading to? This is the part, Christianity insists that the world will end, and that it will just roll up like a scroll, and the triumphant Christ will come to judge the living and the dead. Now, why do they believe that? Obviously, apocalypse haunts history like a ghost in the kind of cosmology I'm defining. There must be anticipations of it. The death of every human being is an anticipation of the apocalypse. The collapse of every empire. Any cessation is a part of the sensation. It is the archetype of the ending. So this knitting together, this compactification of novelty and connectedness, which is emanating out from the most densely compactified and connected thing in nature, which is the human cortex. This is an interesting thing. We've worked so hard to move ourselves out of the center of the mandala. But the fact of the matter is the most complex object in nature is the human brain. Curious.